So, a bit of background before I dive into the situation. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I have a sister, Emma, who's 3 years younger than me. We've always had a somewhat complicated relationship. We get along most of the time, but there's always been this tension. I've always been the responsible one, while she's more spontaneous, carefree, and often takes things for granted. Growing up, I was the one who helped with family responsibilities, did well in school, and basically carried the weight of things that Emma just didn't feel like doing. My parents have always been a little more lenient with her, which has led to some resentment on my part. Fast forward to a few months ago, Emma got engaged. We were both thrilled for her. She asked me to be her maid of honor almost immediately, and of course, I agreed. I didn't think much of it at the time because I love her and it's an important role, so I was ready to be there for her in every way. However, things started to shift when she started making decisions for her wedding and asking for my help. At first, it was fine. I helped her pick a venue, and we went wedding dress shopping together, even though I could tell she wasn't putting much effort into making sure it was the perfect day for her, just whatever was easiest. She would complain about how much planning she had to do, but when I would try to suggest anything, she'd brush me off, saying, "You don't understand, it's all too much. You're so organized, you'll just do it all." I'm a project manager by profession, and my job requires a lot of attention to detail and planning. I'm good at this stuff. I've always been the one to organize family events, vacations, and pretty much anything that requires coordination. So, naturally, when Emma started leaning on me to take charge of the wedding planning, I didn't mind. But soon, the line between helping and doing it all got blurrier. She would send me text after text asking me to book vendors, call venues, coordinate with her fiancé, who was totally hands-off and pretty much leaving everything to her, and even help with guest lists and RSVP management. I didn't mind at first, but I started to notice a pattern. Every time I suggested that she take some responsibility herself, she'd get defensive or passive-aggressive, saying things like, "You always act like you're better at everything," or "I didn't ask you to make everything perfect." I tried to express how overwhelmed I was, how I didn't want to shoulder everything. But instead of hearing me out, she would say, "Well, if you don't want to help, just say it. Don't make me feel like I'm asking for too much." I'd end up feeling guilty and go back to helping her because, I'm her sister and she's my family. Then came the moment that really got me. She asked me to take a leave of absence from work so I could be fully dedicated to her wedding. I was stunned. Not only was that not feasible, I couldn't just take unpaid time off, but it also felt like she was assuming I would just drop everything to cater to her whims. When I told her that I couldn't do that, she got upset and accused me of not caring enough to make her wedding perfect. Things came to a head when I had to turn down a professional opportunity. It was a big promotion, something I had been working toward for years. My boss was offering me a new role with more responsibility and a significant pay increase. I was ecstatic, but the timeline for the transition clashed with the final wedding planning period. I told Emma about the opportunity, hoping she would understand if I had to step back a bit from wedding planning to focus on my career. Instead, she got angry. She told me that if I cared about her at all, I'd be there for her 100%. She said that I was choosing work over family and that I was being selfish. I was floored. I didn't know how to respond. I hadn't expected her to react like that. I spent the next few days thinking it over, trying to decide what to do. I realized that I had been giving way more than I was getting in this relationship. I love my sister, but it felt like she was taking advantage of me and didn't care about what I wanted. So, I made a decision that I didn't take lightly. I told her that I couldn't be her maid of honor anymore. I explained that I couldn't drop everything for her wedding while I was trying to advance my career, and I didn't think I could keep sacrificing my time and energy for her without any appreciation. She was furious. She called me selfish and said I was making everything about me, that this was her special day, and I was ruining it. She told me she couldn't believe I'd back out like that, especially after everything I'd promised her. I tried to explain that I was still happy for her and wanted to be there in other ways, but I just couldn't take on the responsibility of the maid of honor anymore. Now, the rest of the family is involved. My parents are upset with me for making her wedding about me, and my friends are split. Some understand why I did it, but others think I should have sucked it up and helped her. I'm still reeling from the fallout. I don't want to be a bad sister, but I also don't want to lose my career or my sanity over this wedding. I don't know if I made the right call, but it feels like no one is supporting my side of things. So, AITA for telling my sister I won't be her maid of honor because she doesn't support my career. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay with me after he made a rude comment about my home. I, 27M, have a sister, Sarah, 25F, who's been dating her boyfriend, Jason, 28M, for about a year now. They've always been pretty serious, and while I didn't get along with him at first, I've since warmed up to him. He's a decent guy, although I don't think we'll ever be best friends. I own a 2-bedroom apartment in the city. It's small but cozy, and it's been mine for a few years now. I work in finance, and I've been able to manage a decent lifestyle for myself. I like to keep my space clean, but I also enjoy having people over when I can. Over the years, I've had friends, family, and even ex-girlfriends stay with me for short periods, and I don't mind being a host. It's just how I've always been. A few weeks ago, Sarah called me to ask if Jason and her could stay at my place for a weekend. They had a wedding to attend out of town, and their hotel booking fell through last minute. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I didn't want to leave them scrambling for somewhere to stay, so I agreed. I told Sarah that the second bedroom was available, but it's not exactly a luxurious space. It's a small room with a desk and a single bed I use for guests. It's not huge or fancy, but I thought it would work for a couple of nights. When they arrived, I immediately noticed Jason wasn't thrilled with the apartment. He didn't say anything, but I could tell by his face when he walked in. He was polite, but there was a certain air about him that made me feel uncomfortable. I brushed it off at first, but I started noticing little comments he'd make. At one point, he said, "I didn't know people still lived like this. It's a bit cramped, isn't it?" I let it slide, assuming it was just a passing thought, but as the weekend went on, it became more apparent that he was not a fan of my living situation. He'd drop comments like, "This place is so minimal," or "I guess you don't need much space for a bachelor." Each time, I tried to keep the peace, but it was starting to get on my nerves. On the last night they were staying with me, I offered to make them dinner. I cooked a simple meal, nothing extravagant, just some pasta and salad. I didn't expect a grand gesture or anything, but when Jason sat down at the table, he took one look at the meal and said, "I don't know why you're going through all this trouble. It's not like we're staying in a nice place. You could have just ordered some takeout or something." At that point, I was fed up. I stood up and walked over to him. "If you don't like the way I live, I don't know why you're staying here," I said, feeling my frustration bubbling up. "This is my home, and I don't appreciate the constant comments about it. You're welcome to leave anytime if it's bothering you that much." Jason looked shocked, and Sarah immediately jumped in. "What is wrong with you?" she asked. "It's just a little joke. You're overreacting." I explained that it wasn't just one joke. It was a series of passive-aggressive comments that made me feel unwelcome in my own home. I told her that I didn't appreciate Jason's attitude, and I didn't want him staying with me anymore. I told them both to pack up and leave for the night. Sarah was upset, and Jason didn't say much. They left early the next morning, and since then, Sarah hasn't spoken to me much. She's told me I'm being too sensitive, and I'm ruining their relationship by causing drama over something so minor. She also mentioned that Jason doesn't want to come over again unless I improve my living situation. I'm starting to feel like maybe I overreacted. Was I too harsh? Should I have just let it go and dealt with it for the weekend? I honestly don't think it's a huge deal, but now Sarah is pissed, and I'm worried I've damaged our relationship. AITA for not putting up with Jason's rude comments about my home. AITA for telling my sister-in-law that she can't bring her kids to my wedding after she didn't RSVP. So, a little backstory. I, 28F, have been engaged to my fiancé, Tom, 30M, for about a year. We've been planning our wedding for 6 months now, and it's been a pretty smooth process. We're having a fairly traditional ceremony at a nice venue, and we have a guest list of about 100 people. Most of the people we're inviting are family and close friends. It's been an exciting but stressful time, especially with how particular our venue is about headcount and seating arrangements. My sister-in-law, Emily, 32F, is married to my brother, Mark, 35M. Emily and I have always had a bit of a tense relationship. We don't really hate each other, but we've never been close. We're very different people. I'm more introverted and reserved, while she's outgoing and a bit intense. Our interactions have usually been polite but brief, and there's never really been any kind of deep connection between us. The wedding invites went out about 3 months ago. We included a note on the invitation saying that due to the nature of the venue, we'd love to keep the guest list limited to close friends and family. We specifically mentioned that children weren't allowed because the venue has a no-children policy. This wasn't something we wanted to do lightly, but after a lot of discussions, Tom and I felt it was the best option for our wedding. We didn't want to deal with the potential chaos of young kids running around, especially since the event is going to be long and formal. We also didn't want to put anyone in a position of having to leave early or bring a sitter. It was a tough decision, but we made it. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and I still hadn't received a RSVP from Emily. The deadline came and went, so I assumed that she and Mark weren't planning to attend. I didn't think much of it until a few days ago when Emily reached out to me out of the blue. She said that she and Mark wanted to attend the wedding, but that they would be bringing their 2 kids, ages 4 and 6. I told her that unfortunately, the venue has a no-children policy and that we were sticking to it, as we had clearly mentioned on the invitation. She responded by saying that she'd already made arrangements with a family member to babysit, but she didn't want to leave her kids with a sitter all night because they're really young and she doesn't trust anyone else to watch them. She then proceeded to say that her kids are well-behaved and would be fine at the wedding, and that they were part of the family, so they should be included. I gently but firmly reiterated that the no-children rule applied to everyone, no exceptions. I explained that we had a specific number of guests we could invite, and that I didn't want to risk breaking the venue's rules and upsetting other guests who were following the guidelines. I also mentioned that we'd already made seating arrangements based on the RSVP list, and it wasn't possible to make room for extra guests. Emily didn't take it well. She said I was being unreasonable and that I was excluding her children from the family event. She also accused me of playing favorites because I wasn't inviting her kids, but I was inviting my cousin's kids, who were similar in age. I tried to explain that I hadn't invited my cousin's kids either, but she wasn't having it. Then she got really upset and said that it wasn't fair for me to make her choose between her kids and her family. She said that she would probably just skip the wedding if the kids weren't allowed, and that I'd be making a huge mistake by creating this kind of divide in the family. This really got to me because I didn't want anyone to feel excluded, but at the same time, I felt like I was being reasonable. I'm really trying to create a special day for me and Tom, and I don't think it's unfair to expect people to respect our wishes, especially when we've been clear from the start. But now, I'm doubting myself. It's been making me feel guilty that Emily is so upset, and I'm starting to wonder if I should just bend the rules to keep the peace. I feel like I've been really firm about this, but now I'm questioning if I should make an exception or if I'm really being that unreasonable. So, Reddit, AITA for sticking to my no-children policy at my wedding, even though my sister-in-law really wants to bring her kids? Should I have made an exception for her? Or did I do the right thing by standing firm? AITA for telling my sister she's not invited to my wedding after she refused to respect my boundaries? So I, 28F, am getting married to my fiancé, Mark, 32M, in a few months. We're having a pretty small wedding, just close family and friends. It's been a bit of a roller coaster getting everything planned, especially because my younger sister, Jenny, 24F, has been causing some issues. I love my sister, but she's always been someone who doesn't really respect boundaries. She's one of those people who believes that if she wants something, or if it's something that affects her, she should be able to push and push until she gets it. In the past, I've had to step in and draw lines when it comes to her borrowing my things, going through my personal space, and making decisions for me without consulting me first. It's been a constant issue throughout our lives, but I've always tried to give her the benefit of the doubt and let things go. However, things got pretty tense when we started discussing my wedding. The first issue came up when I told Jenny that I had a vision for my wedding dress and would really appreciate it if she didn't try to give me unsolicited opinions or suggestions. She has this habit of helping me by offering her thoughts, even when they're not wanted. It got so bad that I told her I would be picking out the dress on my own and would share it with her later, once I'd made my decision. She agreed, but it was clear she didn't like it. She still tried to sneakily send me links to dresses she thought I should try on, and that was when I knew I had to be firm with her. The next issue came with my bridesmaids. I had already chosen my closest friends to stand by me, but Jenny kept bringing up how she thought she should be my maid of honor. She's my sister, and I get that it's a big deal, but I already have a best friend, Sarah, 30F, who's been my rock for years. I told Jenny that I appreciated how much she cared, but I felt that Sarah was the one who should be in that role. Jenny was clearly upset, but said she understood. Fast forward a few weeks to when I was finalizing my guest list. I was trying to keep it small and intimate due to budget constraints, and I wanted to prioritize close family and friends. Jenny started pushing me to invite some of our extended family members that I didn't really talk to or feel close with. She kept arguing that it was family, and it would be rude not to invite them. I explained that while I understood her point, I didn't want to invite people I barely knew just for the sake of appeasing others. She kept insisting, getting more and more upset with me as time went on. At this point, I started to feel like Jenny was making everything about her. I was already stressed with the planning, and her constant need to insert herself into decisions that weren't hers to make was really starting to wear on me. Things really escalated when I had to start thinking about the seating arrangements. We've been debating whether or not to have a separate kids' table, since some of my friends have young kids, and Jenny lost her mind over it. She has a son, 4, and it became clear that she was dead set on making sure he was at the adult table with her, not with the other kids. I explained to her that there wouldn't be room at the adult table and that I wanted to keep it a bit more formal, which meant the kids would have their own table. Jenny went off on me, saying I was being rude and exclusionary, and she even said that if her son wasn't seated where she wanted, she wouldn't come to the wedding at all. I told her that was ridiculous and that I wasn't going to cater to her whims at the expense of my vision for the day. After that incident, I decided to have a serious conversation with her. I sat down and told her that I loved her, but I was really struggling with the way she was pushing her opinions on me and making everything about her. I reminded her that this was my day, and I wanted her to respect my boundaries. I explained that I needed her support, not more stress. Her response was pretty harsh. She accused me of being selfish, saying that I was excluding her and treating her like she wasn't important to me. She even implied that I didn't care about her opinion because I was too focused on pleasing Mark. I was honestly floored by her reaction. I've always supported her in everything, even when I didn't agree with her choices, but it felt like she didn't have the same respect for me. I told her that if she couldn't respect my boundaries, then I wasn't sure how we were going to continue to have a healthy relationship. I said that I didn't want her to be in the wedding if she was going to make everything difficult. I gave her an ultimatum. Either she could be supportive and respect my decisions, or she could step away and not come to the wedding. Jenny was furious. She called me all kinds of names, accusing me of being a bridezilla and saying I was being unfair to her. She said that I had betrayed her and that she couldn't believe I was treating her like this, especially over something as stupid as a wedding. A few days later, she texted me saying that she wasn't coming to the wedding at all, and that if I didn't change my attitude, she wasn't sure if we'd ever be close again. Now, I'm really conflicted. On one hand, I feel like I was being reasonable. I'm getting married, and it's my right to have the wedding I want. I don't think it's too much to ask for my sister to respect my boundaries. But on the other hand, I feel horrible about the fact that I've essentially told my sister she can't come to my wedding. I don't want to lose her, but I also don't want to tolerate the kind of behavior that's been causing me so much stress. So, AITA for telling my sister she's not invited to my wedding after she refused to respect my boundaries. AITA for telling my friend she can't bring her dog to my wedding after she lied about her dog being an emotional support animal. So I, 29F, am getting married in a few months to my fiancée, 31M. We're having a big wedding with about 150 guests at a venue we both really love, and I've been pretty involved in the planning because, well, I've been dreaming about this day for a while. My fiance has been great, but I'm definitely the one handling most of the details. One of the things that I made very clear from the start is that there will be no pets allowed. I love animals, but our venue has a strict no pets policy, and it just felt like too much to try to coordinate with the space we're renting. I made sure to let everyone know this up front when I sent out the invitations. Now, there's a bit of background I need to explain. My friend Anna, 30F, and I have been close since college. We used to be inseparable, but in the last few years, we've grown apart a little, mostly because of her behavior. Anna got a dog, a small, yappy breed, and while I'm all for people having pets, this dog has become her whole life. She talks about it nonstop, posts about it constantly on social media, and it's kind of over the top. I'm happy she's found something she loves, but sometimes it feels like her dog is her entire personality. About 6 months ago, she asked me if she could bring her dog to my wedding. I told her that it was strictly a no-pets event, and she seemed okay with that. Fast forward a few months, and Anna calls me out of the blue and tells me that her dog is an emotional support animal, ESA, and that it's legally allowed to be with her wherever she goes, even in places where pets are typically banned. At first, I was skeptical. I mean, I know that people with legitimate emotional needs have support animals, but I've never seen her dog provide any real support. It's not like she's been through some major trauma or mental health struggles that I'm aware of, and her dog doesn't have any sort of certification or training that would suggest it's an ESA. I told Anna that while I understand her bond with her dog, the venue's policy is very clear and I can't make exceptions. I also explained that even if the dog was an ESA, it didn't change the fact that the venue has a strict no-pet rule, and it's not something I can negotiate on. She wasn't happy about this, and she kept pushing. She started saying things like, "You know how much I struggle without him, and he's been with me through everything." She also claimed that the dog is trained to behave at events, which I found hard to believe because, again, the dog is a tiny, loud, and very anxious creature that barks constantly. I started to feel guilty, but I stood my ground. It wasn't just the dog itself. It was the principle of it. If I made an exception for her, it would open the door for others to ask for similar accommodations, and that wasn't something I was willing to deal with. After I refused, Anna started to act distant, and our conversations became more tense. I didn't realize how much this was bothering her until she reached out to me again, this time with a solution. She told me she would just bring the dog anyway and deal with any consequences later. I was taken aback. It felt like she was completely disregarding my wishes, the venue's rules, and the entire situation. At this point, I had to make it clear that if she brought the dog without my permission, I would have to uninvite her from the wedding. It felt extreme, but I wasn't about to let her turn my wedding into something about her and her dog. I also knew it was likely she would cause a scene if I didn't take a firm stand. The next few days were incredibly awkward. Anna tried to get other mutual friends to talk to me, telling them that I was being unreasonable and cruel for not letting her bring her dog, especially after she went through the trouble of getting him certified as an ESA, which, to be honest, I'm still not sure is even true. She even tried to guilt trip me, saying that this was one of the most important things in her life and that I was choosing my wedding over her friendship. I'm not going to lie, I've been hurt by how she's reacted. I understand that she's attached to her dog, but it feels like she's manipulating me and the situation. My fiancé has been supportive of my decision, though he's a little uncomfortable with how Anna has been treating me. He suggested we send her a reminder about the no-pet rule in writing, which I did, but it hasn't made things better. She's still angry, and we haven't spoken much since then. Now, I'm feeling torn. I don't want to lose a friend over something like this, but at the same time, I feel like I've been more than reasonable. It's my wedding, and I want it to be about us, not about someone else's emotional attachment to their dog. AITA for standing firm on my no-pet policy, even if it's costing me a friendship. So I, 30F, just had my wedding, and it was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My husband, 32M, and I planned everything down to the last detail, and we were beyond excited. The only hiccup was my sister, Ella, 28F, who somehow managed to ruin everything. Let me give you some background. Ella and I have always had a complicated relationship. She's my younger sister, but she's always been a bit unpredictable, to put it lightly. She's always been very dramatic and attention-seeking, and while we've had our ups and downs, I've always tried to be understanding. Growing up, she would always pull stunts to get attention, like claiming she was sick when there was nothing wrong with her, or saying that someone hurt her feelings when they didn't even know she existed. I've tried to be patient, but it's exhausting. When my fiancé and I announced our wedding, Ella immediately jumped on the bandwagon, offering to help with all the planning. I didn't want her to feel left out, so I let her take charge of the bridal shower and a few other minor details. Big mistake. She made everything about her. The bridal shower was more of a party for her, and all the attention was on how beautiful she looked instead of celebrating me. Fast forward to the wedding. We had everything set up at a beautiful venue, elegant but not over the top. I wanted it to be about love, family, and celebrating our future. Ella showed up looking stunning, of course, but she seemed to be in her own world. She kept making strange comments like, "I can't believe you're marrying him. He's not even that great looking," or "I'm so glad this is happening, but I'm really the one everyone's going to remember from this day." I brushed it off, but I was getting frustrated. During the reception, my husband's family and friends were all mingling, and I was having the time of my life. But then, something happened. Ella, after a few too many drinks, started making loud, pointed remarks about how I had settled for my husband, how she thought I could do better, and how my wedding dress was a little too simple for a girl who thought she was all that. At first, I didn't react because I didn't want to make a scene, but then she started making comments about my husband's family. She was talking about how his mom looked cheap and how his friends were probably all ex-convicts just based on the way they dressed. This was beyond the line. At that point, I had to pull her aside. I was trying to be calm, telling her that she was ruining my day, that this wasn't about her, and that she needed to stop. She burst into tears and accused me of throwing her under the bus, just like I always did. She said I was treating her like a child and that she wasn't allowed to have an opinion. I told her that her behavior wasn't an opinion. It was disrespectful. The worst part was when she started causing a scene on the dance floor. She was drunk and started dancing provocatively in front of my husband, making him uncomfortable. I had to step in and ask her to leave. This caused a huge family argument. My parents sided with Ella, saying that I should have been more understanding, that it was my responsibility to take care of her and not make her feel excluded. But I was done at that point. I told my parents that Ella was no longer welcome at my wedding, and I needed her to leave. They didn't take it well, but they ultimately supported my decision. After the wedding, Ella texted me saying that I was selfish and mean and that she was never coming to any family events again. My parents have been giving me the cold shoulder, saying I should have just let Ella have her moment because she's not well. I get that Ella struggles with certain things, but this was way beyond the pale. She was actively trying to sabotage the happiest day of my life, and I couldn't just let it slide. Now, the rest of my family is mad at me for ruining Ella's chance to bond with the family and for treating her like a child. I've been getting texts from relatives telling me I shouldn't have shamed her in front of everyone. Some even say that my husband should have stepped in and done something to stop her behavior. But honestly, he was just as shocked as I was by how she acted. He doesn't want to get involved in family drama, and I don't blame him. I just don't know if I'm being too harsh. I'm not perfect, and maybe I could have handled things differently, but I just couldn't let her ruin my day. So, AITA for not letting my sister stay at my house after she ruined my wedding. So I, 27F, have an older sister, 32F, and our relationship has always been somewhat rocky. We have different personalities, interests, and viewpoints on pretty much everything. Despite this, I've always tried to be there for her, especially in big life moments. But lately, things have taken a turn, and I need some outside perspective. A few months ago, my sister got engaged to her longtime boyfriend, Jake, 35M. The engagement was a big deal, and everyone was excited, but I quickly started feeling a bit left out of the planning process. I knew that being close in age to her, I'd likely be involved in some capacity as a bridesmaid, or at least be asked to help out in some way. But no, my sister didn't reach out to me for any of that. In fact, she barely mentioned the wedding to me unless I specifically asked about it. I let it slide at first, assuming she had her hands full with the planning, but then I started noticing a pattern. When I would ask her about wedding details, she would either brush me off or give me vague answers. The most frustrating part was that she would rave about the wedding plans to our parents and other people, but not include me in the conversation. It wasn't like I was making a huge fuss, either. I just wanted to be included in the way any sister would expect to be. After all, we've been through a lot together. Growing up, we had each other's backs when things got tough at home, and I had always supported her in her previous endeavors. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, the wedding is coming up soon, and I still haven't been given any clear role. I wasn't sure if I was even invited to be a part of the bridal party, so I asked her directly. I said something like, "Hey, I just wanted to check in and see if I'm part of the wedding party, or if there's anything I can help with. I'd love to be involved in some way." She seemed really cold when she responded, almost as if my asking bothered her. She told me that they already had everything planned and that they didn't need any more help and that I wasn't going to be a bridesmaid. I didn't really know how to respond to that, so I just nodded along, feeling hurt but not wanting to make a big deal out of it. That's when I decided I would at least contribute in a different way. I'm not rich by any means, but I wanted to give my sister a thoughtful wedding gift, so I spent a decent amount of money on a customized piece of art for her in Jake's new home. I had it made professionally, and it was beautiful, something I knew she would appreciate. It wasn't overly expensive, but it was definitely more than the average gift, and I put a lot of thought into it. The day of the wedding arrived, and I brought the gift to the venue. I had assumed that I'd still be able to attend, even if I wasn't part of the bridal party. But when I got to the reception, my sister's face completely changed when she saw me. She looked shocked, almost like she didn't want me there. I was still trying to be polite and said, "Hi, I'm really excited for you two today. I hope everything is perfect." That's when she pulled me aside. She was clearly upset and said something along the lines of, "I don't know why you're here, but I don't think it's a good idea for you to stay. I know we've had issues in the past, but I really thought you would understand why I've had to keep you at arm's length." At this point, I was shocked. She went on to say that she felt my gift was too much and that it was too personal. She told me that I had crossed a line by not sticking to a more generic gift like everyone else. I was confused and hurt, especially since I had only meant to do something nice. I tried to explain that I thought the gift would be something meaningful to her, but she said that it was just another example of me overstepping boundaries and that I was making her uncomfortable by being there at all. It was like a slap in the face. AITA for refusing to let my friend's fiancé stay with me after I found out about her cheating. So, here's the situation. I, 29M, have a close friend, Mark, 30M, who's been in a relationship with his fiancée, Emily, 28F, for about 3 years. I've known Mark since college, and we're pretty tight. We've been through a lot together, and he's always had my back. I consider him family at this point. Emily, however, I've known less well. She's nice, but I wouldn't say we're super close. We get along, but we don't hang out one-on-one much. Recently, I moved into a new place, and Mark and Emily both know about it. They're planning their wedding, and I've been helping them with some of the logistics, offering advice, and just being there when they need someone. It's been a bit hectic with all the wedding stuff, and I get that it's a stressful time. But things took a turn last weekend that I never saw coming. Here's what happened. I was at a party with some friends, including Mark. Emily wasn't there because she had to work late. I didn't think much of it, but during the party, I ran into one of my old college friends, Sarah, 27F. Sarah and I used to be pretty close, but we drifted apart after graduation. We started chatting, catching up on life, and she mentioned that she had seen Emily out at a bar the week before. Apparently, Emily was all over this guy, acting flirty, and they were getting really cozy. Sarah didn't think much of it first, but then she saw Emily leave with him in the early hours of the morning. At first, I didn't think much of it. People go out, have fun, and sometimes that's all it is. But then Sarah started telling me more details about what happened that night, and I started to feel really uncomfortable. She said she saw them leaving together and even made a joke to Emily about it the next day when they were both at the same cafe. Emily seemed to brush it off like it was nothing. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I let it go for a couple of days, but it kept gnawing at me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had to tell Mark. I couldn't just sit on this information, especially since they were planning a wedding. So I texted Mark and asked if we could talk privately. We met up a couple of hours later, and I told him what I had heard. I made it clear that I wasn't accusing Emily of anything, but that I thought he needed to know what I had heard from Sarah. Mark was pretty shaken up at first. He kept saying he didn't believe it because Emily had always seemed so trustworthy. I understand that. I get how it must feel to have someone you love potentially betray you. But I told him that he had every right to at least ask Emily about it, and that he should get to the bottom of it before they got too deep into wedding planning. Mark thanked me for telling him, but he also looked pretty devastated. He said he was going to confront Emily about it, but that he wasn't sure how to approach her without sounding like he didn't trust her. I told him I understood, and I promised to support him no matter what. A few days later, Mark called me in a state of absolute shock. Emily had confessed to cheating. She admitted to flirting with the guy at the bar and even going home with him. She said it didn't mean anything and that it was a one-time mistake. But Mark was heartbroken. He didn't know what to do. He was considering calling off the wedding, but didn't know if he could get past it. Now, here's where I might be the asshole. After everything went down, Emily reached out to me. She said she felt embarrassed and ashamed and that she wanted to apologize for what happened. She told me she was trying to make things right with Mark, and she hoped that I could somehow help smooth things over. She also mentioned that she and Mark were having some issues and that the stress of wedding planning was taking a toll on their relationship. I listened to her, but I wasn't interested in helping her fix things with Mark. She made a mistake, and I felt like she had to own that, not manipulate people into covering for her. But then, Emily dropped another bombshell. She asked if she could stay at my place for a couple of days. Apparently, Mark had kicked her out after the confession, and she didn't have anywhere else to go. I told her I didn't think it was a good idea for her to stay at my place, especially after what had happened. I didn't feel comfortable being in close quarters with someone who had betrayed my friend, even if it was a mistake. Plus, I felt like Mark was going to need space to figure out what he wanted. I didn't want to be in the middle of their mess. Emily tried to convince me by saying that she just needed a place to cool off and that she wouldn't stay long, but I held firm. I told her I wasn't in a position to help her in that way. I felt like it was important for her to face the consequences of her actions. When I told Emily no, she got upset. She said I was being harsh and that I was making her feel like an outcast. She even brought up how I'd known her for a couple of years and should be more understanding. She told me that if I was truly Mark's friend, I should support her too. I told her that supporting her meant being honest with her about what she had done and not enabling her to sweep it under the rug. She ended up leaving without saying much more. Afterward, Mark called me and thanked me for having his back. He said he wasn't sure what he was going to do about the wedding yet, but he appreciated that I wasn't taking sides and that I was looking out for him. But then, Emily reached out to me again and said that I had made everything worse by turning her away. She told me that I should have been a better friend to her and that I could have helped her work through things instead of just being another person judging her. Now, I'm feeling like maybe I overreacted. I wanted to support Mark, but I also didn't want to get tangled up in Emily's mess. I'm questioning whether I was too harsh by refusing her a place to stay. It just felt like a lot, and I didn't want to be the one to make everything more complicated. But then again, I'm still close friends with Mark, and he's been through a lot already. So, AITA for refusing to let Emily stay with me after everything that happened? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for demanding that my fiancé uninvite his best friend from our wedding after I found out he's been in love with me for years. I, 29F, am getting married to my fiancé, 32M, in 6 months. We've been together for almost 3 years, and everything has been going smoothly. We've had some small disagreements, but nothing major. I'm in love with him, and I'm genuinely excited for our future together. However, recently something has happened that's shaken me to my core, and I need advice. My fiancé's best friend, Tom, 34M, has been in his life for over 15 years. They met in college and have been inseparable ever since. Tom is one of those people who's always around. Every birthday, every holiday, every family event, and so on. He's always made himself a part of our lives, even though I've never been super close with him. I'd say I tolerate him, but that's mostly because of his long-standing friendship with my fiancée. Tom has a bit of an awkward energy to him, but I never thought much of it. I've always assumed he was just a little socially off, and it's been easy to ignore, especially since my fiancé and I spend most of our time together. A few months ago, while planning our wedding, my fiancé and I had some disagreements about the guest list. He wanted to invite a lot of his childhood friends, including a few that I'd never even met. We compromised and agreed to invite everyone we both felt comfortable with. At the time, I didn't think twice about Tom being there because he's been around for so long. But recently, I found out something that completely changed my perspective on him. I had a private conversation with one of my fiancé's cousins, Sarah, 30F, who's always been one of my closest friends in his family. We were talking about the wedding, and I mentioned how I was looking forward to it, despite all the stress of planning. At one point, Sarah brought up Tom. I assumed it was just casual talk, but then she said something that made my heart drop. I hope you're ready for the drama Tom's going to cause at the wedding. I was immediately confused, and I asked her to elaborate. Sarah hesitated for a moment before saying, "You know Tom has been in love with you for years, right?" I literally froze. My mind couldn't process the words she was saying. She went on to explain that Tom had secretly been in love with me ever since we started dating. At first, he tried to hide it, but over time, it became more apparent to everyone in the family, including my fiancé, that Tom's feelings for me were more than just friendship. According to Sarah, my fiancé had been aware of it for a while, but didn't say anything because he didn't want to cause any issues in his friendship with Tom. I felt like I was going to pass out. I asked Sarah why she was telling me this now, and she said it was because she felt like I needed to know before the wedding. She told me that Tom had made multiple comments to her in private about how he still thought I was the one and how he had never stopped loving me. He had even hinted that he was hoping something would happen between us after the wedding, though it wasn't clear if he meant that in a casual way or if he was planning on making some sort of move. I didn't know what to think. I immediately went home and confronted my fiancé. I asked him if he knew about Tom's feelings for me, and he was surprisingly calm about the whole thing. He admitted that he had known for a while, but didn't think it was something I needed to know. He said Tom had always kept it quiet and never acted on it, so he didn't see it as a problem. I was furious. I couldn't believe that my fiancé had kept this from me. I felt completely betrayed. If I had known about Tom's feelings earlier, I would have made different choices in terms of how I interacted with him. It's one thing to have someone in your life who's a little awkward or distant, but it's another thing to know they've been harboring these feelings for years and you've been unknowingly leading them on. I felt disgusted and violated in a way I can't quite explain. I told my fiancé that I didn't want Tom at the wedding anymore. I didn't want him anywhere near me, let alone as part of our special day. My fiancé was shocked. He tried to convince me that Tom wouldn't cause any issues and that I was overreacting. He told me that Tom was a loyal friend and would never do anything to jeopardize our relationship. But I couldn't get past the fact that my fiancé had known about this and hadn't told me. How could I trust him if he didn't think I had a right to know? I insisted that Tom be uninvited, and things got really tense between my fiancé and me. He told me I was being unreasonable and that I was blowing this out of proportion. He claimed that Tom was just a friend and that it wasn't a big deal. But to me, it was. I couldn't shake the feeling that Tom had been secretly in love with me the entire time. I didn't want him anywhere near our wedding or our future. After a few days of arguing, my fiancé finally agreed to uninvite Tom, but he was incredibly upset about it. He said I was putting him in a terrible position and that he didn't want to lose his best friend over something so trivial. He tried to explain that Tom would be crushed by the decision, but I didn't care. I told him that if he valued our relationship, he would support my decision, and that meant not having someone who had feelings for me around on our wedding day. Since then, my fiancé and I have barely spoken. He's still upset with me, and I feel guilty about the whole situation. I know Tom is going to be hurt, but I just can't put myself in a position where I feel uncomfortable or unsafe at my own wedding. I've tried to explain how I feel to my fiancé, but it's like he doesn't understand why this is such a big deal for me. He thinks I'm being overly dramatic, but I think I'm just protecting myself from someone who could potentially ruin what's supposed to be the happiest day of my life. So, Reddit, AITA for demanding my fiancé uninvite his best friend from our wedding after I found out he's been in love with me for years? I feel like I'm in a lose-lose situation, and I'm not sure if I'm being too harsh or if I'm right to stand my ground. I need some outside perspective. AITA for refusing to let my sister's best friend stay with us after her wedding. So I, 29F, am married to my husband, Jake, 31M, and we have a pretty cozy house. It's not big, but it's ours, and we've worked really hard to make it a home. My sister, Maya, 26F, is my only sibling, and we're generally close, though we don't always see eye to eye on everything. A few months ago, Maya got engaged to her fiancé, Sam, 29M, and I was really happy for her. We've always been supportive of each other in the big milestones of life, and I'm genuinely excited to see her so happy. But this is where things got tricky. Maya and Sam are planning a pretty big wedding, and it's happening in a few weeks. The venue is about 2 hours away from where we live, so not exactly something you could drive to in from a day. As the big day was approaching, Maya asked me if her best friend Lily, 27F, could stay with us for a few days before the wedding. I have no problem hosting people, but there's a bit of a backstory with Lily that made me feel uneasy. Lily and I have always had a strained relationship. She's a great friend to my sister, but she's always been kind of dismissive and even rude to me in the past. I can't count how many times she's made passive-aggressive comment about my life choices, my job, and especially my relationship with Jake. She has a tendency to belittle me in front of people, even if it's just a joke, and it's always made me feel like I'm the odd one out whenever she's around. Maya usually brushes it off, saying Lily just has a dry sense of humor, or that I'm too sensitive. To be honest, I've tried to let it go because I know Maya really values Lily's friendship. But when Maya asked if Lily could stay with us for a few days, I just froze. I didn't want to say yes because I didn't feel comfortable with her in my space. I know it's her wedding week and everything, and I'd love to be supportive, but I felt like this would be too much. I've always made it clear to Maya that I don't enjoy having Lily over, but Maya insisted that it was just for a few days, and she really didn't want to upset anyone. I ended up saying no. I told Maya that I wasn't comfortable hosting Lily, and I gave my reasons. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her that I feel like Lily's been rude to me in the past, and I didn't want to open my home to someone who has made me feel disrespected. Maya wasn't happy. She got upset, saying I was being unreasonable and that I was ruining the whole vibe of her pre-wedding celebration by refusing to be hospitable to someone who's been a big part of her life. She even said that I was making her choose between me and Lily, and that it was selfish of me to put her in that position. I tried to explain that it wasn't about her, and it wasn't about her wedding, but rather about my comfort in my own home. Maya said that I was overthinking things and being dramatic, and that this was just how weddings go. People need to sacrifice some of their own comfort for the bigger picture. Now, I'm really torn. I feel like I'm in a no-win situation. On one hand, I understand that weddings can be stressful, and I don't want to cause my sister more stress in the final weeks before her wedding. But on the other hand, I feel like my feelings and my boundaries are being disregarded. I honestly don't want to be around Lily for an extended period of time, especially not in my own house. I'm usually pretty accommodating, but this feels like a bridge too far. To make matters worse, Maya has been texting me every day about how upset she is that I won't help out with just this one little thing. She keeps mentioning how everyone else is pitching in for the wedding, and that if I truly cared about her, I would step up and do this for her. I feel guilty because I know it's important to her, but at the same time, I don't think I should be forced to compromise my own peace for the sake of someone else's wedding plans. I told Jake about everything, and while he was sympathetic to my situation, he said that if it were him, he would have probably just said yes and try to make the best of it. He pointed out that weddings are stressful, and sometimes we have to make sacrifices for family, even if it's not ideal. I get where he's coming from, but at the same time, I don't want to feel like I'm constantly putting up with people who make me uncomfortable just to keep the peace. So now, Maya is still upset with me, and I'm wondering if I'm being unreasonable. Should I have just sucked it up and let Lily stay for a few days? Or am I right to stand my ground and refuse to host someone who has treated me poorly in the past? AITA for asking my sister-in-law to not bring her dog to my wedding after it caused chaos at my engagement party? So I, 29F, have been engaged to my fiancé, Jake, 31M, for about 6 months now. We decided to have a small, intimate wedding with close family and friends. It was all supposed to be relaxed, no big fuss, and a celebration of our relationship. We were in the middle of planning, but there was one issue that came up during our engagement party that's been causing a lot of tension within the family. Jake's sister, Megan, 35F, has a dog that she treats like a child. I'm talking about a full-on obsession. The dog is always with her, whether she's going out, at home, or even at family gatherings. I'm not someone who dislikes animals. I love dogs and we have one of our own, but I don't feel the need to bring my dog to every event or social occasion. I also understand that some people have allergies or phobias, so I tend to be mindful of that. During our engagement party, which was a small backyard gathering, Megan showed up with her dog, Benny, without even mentioning it beforehand. She just walked in like it was completely normal. The dog immediately started running around, barking incessantly, jumping on guests, and even knocked over a few drinks. It wasn't just disruptive, it was chaotic. I have a lot of older relatives, and one of them was visibly shaken because she's afraid of dogs. At one point, Benny tried to jump into the pool, and Megan just stood there, laughing, not really caring that things were getting out of hand. I ended up having to step in and tell Megan that she needed to take Benny outside and calm him down because it was getting out of control. At first, she didn't understand why I was upset and acted like I was overreacting. But after seeing the state of things, her dog had knocked over a table and scratched a guest. She reluctantly took Benny to the backyard, but she wasn't happy about it. The rest of the party was much more relaxed after that, but the whole situation left me feeling uncomfortable. The day was supposed to be about celebrating with our loved ones, and instead, there was a lot of unnecessary chaos because of one dog. Since then, I've been a little on edge about the whole dog situation. When we started discussing the wedding details, I told Jake that I didn't want Benny at the wedding. I don't want a repeat of what happened at the engagement party. A dog running around, upsetting guests, and making it difficult for people to enjoy the celebration. It's not that I don't like Benny, I just want the day to go smoothly, and I don't think having a dog there is going to help with that. Jake was understanding, but he said I should talk to Megan directly, as she's going to want Benny there no matter what. So I did. I had a conversation with Megan, and I explained that while I love animals, I didn't feel that it would be appropriate to have Benny at the wedding. I mentioned that it's an event where people need to be able to relax, and having a dog running around might cause some people discomfort. I also pointed out that it was a formal setting and that having Benny there might not be ideal. Megan didn't take it well. She said that Benny is part of the family and that I was being unreasonable and insensitive by asking her to leave him at home. She also said that I was trying to control everything and that it would be wrong for her to not bring Benny to such an important event. It was clear that she wasn't going to be happy with my request. The conversation got a bit heated, and I ended up telling her that if she insisted on bringing Benny, she could choose to attend the wedding without him or not come at all. I thought it was a fair compromise, but Megan has since been telling the rest of the family that I'm trying to dictate her life and that I'm being mean about Benny. Some of Jake's relatives have backed her up, saying that I'm being too harsh about the whole situation and that it's just a dog. It's not a big deal. Now, there's a lot of drama going on in our family, with people taking sides. My own parents are a bit upset because they think I'm being too rigid, and they say that I should just let it go and let Megan bring her dog. They argue that it's Megan's choice whether she wants to bring Benny and that it's a small issue that doesn't need to cause so much conflict. Jake is caught in the middle, and while he agrees with me, he's worried about the fallout and doesn't want to make things worse with his family. He said that I shouldn't have been so firm with Megan and that maybe I should have tried to find a middle ground, like letting her bring Benny, but making sure he's kept in a crate or something during the ceremony. I'm feeling really conflicted. I want to have a peaceful wedding without unnecessary drama. But I also feel that Megan's behavior at the engagement party was disrespectful, and I don't want to allow it to happen again. I feel like I'm being painted as the villain for trying to set a boundary, but at the same time, I don't think it's unreasonable to want a wedding where people can relax without the distraction of a dog causing chaos. So, AITA for asking Megan not to bring her dog to my wedding, AITA for not inviting my sister to my wedding after she ruined my engagement party. So, this is a bit of a long story, and I might be overreacting, but I need some outside perspective on this. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I recently got engaged to my amazing fiancé, Brian, 31. Our engagement party was a small affair. Only close family and friends invited. Nothing too extravagant, just an intimate gathering in my parents' house. Everything was going perfectly, or so I thought, until my younger sister, Zoe, 24, completely ruined it. To give some context, Zoe and I have never really gotten along. We've always had a bit of sibling rivalry, but it never went beyond petty stuff like fighting over clothes or arguing about stupid things growing up. The main issue is that Zoe has always been kind of drama queen and has this tendency to make everything about her. A few months before the engagement party, I asked Zoe to be my maid of honor. At the time, I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to bond and strengthen our relationship. I mean, she's my sister, and I wanted her to feel included. At first, she was thrilled, but things started to go downhill pretty quickly after that. Zoe started making the wedding planning process more about her than about me. She kept pushing me to make decisions based on what she wanted rather than what I envisioned for the wedding. For example, she insisted that I get a specific wedding dress that was really expensive, even though I had already chosen one that was within my budget. She also kept asking me for extravagant gifts like designer shoes and bags for the bridal party. It felt like every time we talked, she was making it about her needs and wants, not my special day. I tried to be patient, but after a few weeks, I started feeling overwhelmed by her constant demands. So, when it came time to plan the engagement party, I made sure to keep things small and low-key, just family, a few close friends, and nothing that would get her worked up. Now, here's where things went south. The night of the party, everything seemed to be going fine at first. Brian and I were mingling with our guests, having a good time, and soaking in the joy of the occasion. That was until Zoe pulled me aside and told me she wanted to talk in private. I thought she was just going to vent about wedding planning, but it turned out to be much worse. She started yelling at me about how I wasn't giving her enough attention. She said that it felt like I was dismissing her and that she felt like she was just a side character in my wedding. This came completely out of nowhere and in front of everyone. I was caught off guard, and I tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't stop. It escalated quickly, and at some point, she started accusing me of being a bad sister for not giving her the respect she deserved. Things got more heated, and at that point, Zoe started saying some really hurtful things. She told me that if I didn't change the way I was treating her, she would seriously consider not being part of the wedding at all. She also said that I was being selfish by not catering to her needs for my wedding and that I was pushing her away when I should be celebrating her. The whole room had gone quiet by this point, and I could see everyone was staring at us. My parents were there, and they didn't intervene at all. It felt like I was just being blindsided by my own sister, and I was completely humiliated in front of everyone. Eventually, I asked Zoe to leave because she was making a scene. I couldn't deal with it anymore, and I wanted the night to be about me and Brian, not some drama. Zoe left the party in tears, and ever since then, things have been incredibly tense between us. She's been texting me nonstop, calling me selfish, and saying that I disrespected her. My parents have tried to stay neutral, but they've made it clear that they think I should have handled the situation better. My fiancé thinks I did the right thing by standing up for myself, but he also feels bad that our engagement night turned into a huge drama fest. Now, we're planning our wedding, and I haven't invited Zoe to the event. I feel like she crossed a line at the engagement party and showed me that she can't be trusted to respect the boundaries I've set for the wedding. I don't want her to ruin the day for me and Brian, especially since she's already made it clear that she's not happy with how things are going. I've told my parents that Zoe isn't invited, and they're not happy about it. They keep saying that family should stick together, but I feel like I've given her so many chances to act like an adult and not a spoiled child. I just don't know what to do anymore. I feel like I'm being gaslit and blamed for standing up for myself. But at the same time, I feel like I might be taking things too far by not inviting her to my wedding. AITA for not inviting my sister after the way she treated me at my engagement party. AITA for kicking my brother out of my wedding after he publicly humiliated my fiancée. I'm getting married in a few months, and I've been planning this wedding for a little over a year now. My fiancé, let's call him Dan, and I have been together for about 5 years, and everything has been going pretty smoothly. We're both in our early 30s, and everything was going to plan until my brother, Jake, 27, got involved. Jake has always been, well, not great with people. He's had a history of making awkward and sometimes offensive comments at family gatherings, but I've always brushed it off because I thought he'd eventually grow up and mature. He's been through some difficult stuff in his life, especially in terms of his mental health, and while I sympathize, there are certain things that can't be ignored anymore. For context, my fiancé Dan is biracial. His mother is black, and his father is white. They live in a predominantly white neighborhood, and while Dan's always been proud of his mixed heritage, he's had some tough moments growing up with people making insensitive remarks about his race. When I met him, I was pretty protective of him, especially when we visited my family, who I knew could sometimes be, well, a bit out of touch. I've had some uncomfortable moments with him in the past when it came to race, but they have all tried, and mostly failed, to educate themselves on the matter. Now, here's where the problem started. A few months ago, I invited Jake over to my house to discuss his role as one of my groomsmen. He's always been important to me despite his issues, and I really wanted him to be part of my special day. Everything seemed fine until I casually mentioned that Dan and I were planning to incorporate elements of his culture into our wedding, including some traditional food, music, and a few other things that represented both his family's background and mine. Jake's reaction was immediate and, honestly, shocking. He straight up laughed and said, "What's next? You're going to have a ceremony in a black church." The tone was dismissive, almost mocking. I thought he was joking at first, but when I saw the look on his face, I knew he was serious. I tried to stay calm and explain that it was important to me that we celebrate both of our cultures. But Jake started going off about how woke everything had become and how everything had to be about race now. He said, "This whole thing is just ridiculous. It's not like you're even really black, right?" Dan wasn't there at the time, but I immediately felt like I had to defend him. I told Jake that if he couldn't respect the way we wanted to celebrate our wedding, then he shouldn't be part of it. Jake got defensive and said he was just joking and that I needed to lighten up. He called me overly sensitive and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. I was furious, but didn't want to escalate things further. So I told Jake he had a week to apologize and reconsider his attitude if he wanted to be part of my wedding at all. He didn't apologize. In fact, he made it worse. Over the next few days, he started telling other family members that I was being a drama queen and that I was overreacting about something that shouldn't be a big deal. I started getting calls and messages from family members, some who supported me, and some who sided with Jake, saying that I was too sensitive and turning a simple comment into a family feud. By this point, I was at my breaking point. I wasn't going to let my brother's ignorance ruin the biggest day of my life. So I made the decision to uninvite him from my wedding. I sent him a text saying that he was no longer welcome to be part of the wedding party, and I told him I didn't think it was healthy for us to have him there given his attitude. I asked him to respect my decision and that I hoped we could work on our relationship after the wedding, but I needed space for now. Jake responded with a long, angry message, calling me a traitor and saying I was choosing Dan over my own family. He accused me of being brainwashed and said I was letting Dan's side of the family control me. He even said that if I went through with the wedding without him there, I'd ruin our relationship forever. He said, "You'll regret this when you realize how stupid you were for choosing him over me." The message hit hard, but I stood firm. I told him that I loved him, but I wasn't going to tolerate disrespect from him, and that was my final decision. Fast forward to the wedding day. My family arrived, and everything was going smoothly. The ceremony was beautiful, and Dan and I were so happy. But just as we were about to start the reception, Jake showed up uninvited. He was standing in the back, scowling, and I could tell he was there to make a scene. My heart dropped because I had hoped things could remain peaceful. He made a beeline toward me, started shouting about how I was making a huge mistake and that I was turning my back on him in front of all our guests. Dan and I both tried to keep calm, but it was honestly so awkward and uncomfortable. I didn't want my wedding day to be marred by his drama, so I took a deep breath and calmly asked him to leave. Jake refused and tried to argue with me. That's when I had had enough. I told the staff to escort him off the premises. He didn't leave quietly. There were a few exchanges and people were looking on, but eventually he was escorted out. The aftermath has been brutal. My parents are furious with me for kicking him out, and some relatives say I overreacted. Others say that they're glad I stood up for myself. Dan and I are doing well, but I feel the weight of the fallout with my family. My parents keep telling me that family is family, and I shouldn't let my wedding ruin everything. I'm starting to feel guilty. Did I make the right call? Should I have tried harder to make things work with Jake before kicking him out? AITA for making this decision. I, 29F, have been friends with Sarah, 30F, for about 10 years. We met in college, bonded over shared interests in literature and hiking, and have been inseparable ever since. We've been through a lot together: breakups, job changes, family struggles, you name it. So when Sarah got engaged last year to her long-term boyfriend, James, 32M, I was over the moon for her. The wedding planning process started out fine. She asked me to be one of her bridesmaids, and we began the usual whirlwind of dress fittings, bridal showers, and organizing the bachelorette party. Throughout this process, I was happy to help with whatever I could, emotionally and financially. I even chipped in to help pay for the venue when Sarah mentioned she was a bit short on the funds. But a few months ago, things started to change. Sarah had started acting weird towards me. We'd always had a really close friendship, so when she became distant, I assumed it was just wedding stress. But then one day, she asked if we could meet for coffee. I thought it was a normal catching up kind of chat, but it quickly turned into something else. She told me that she and James had been talking, and they both felt uncomfortable with how close my partner, Leo, 32M, and I had become. I was shocked. Leo and I have been together for 3 years, and he's been a part of my life for the last 2 years of our friendship. He's friendly, respectful, and honestly, I thought they got along fine. I've never seen any tension between him and Sarah or James. Sarah said that while Leo is a nice guy, he's just not the type of person they want at their wedding. She didn't elaborate much more than that, but she made it clear that he wouldn't be invited to the ceremony or reception. She also mentioned how his lack of social awareness had made some people uncomfortable in the past, but again, I had no idea what she was talking about. Leo isn't loud or obnoxious, and we've always been invited to the same events together with other friends. He's never caused any issues. I tried to stay calm and asked her why she didn't just talk to me directly about this if there was an issue with Leo, instead of letting things get to this point. She said that she didn't want to rock the boat, but she felt that it was important to set boundaries before the wedding. At this point, I was getting a little upset, but I tried to hold it together. I asked if she was saying I was invited, but Leo wasn't, and she confirmed that's exactly what she meant. She told me that she wanted me at the wedding, but the invitation wouldn't extend to my partner. I told Sarah that I couldn't attend without Leo. I understand that weddings are personal events, but I don't think it's unreasonable to expect my partner to be included in my close friend's big day. I explained to her that it would be extremely uncomfortable for me to go alone. I also pointed out that Leo and I had been through a lot together, and if she felt like he wasn't good enough to be at the wedding, it would create a rift that I wouldn't be able to ignore. Her response was that she was disappointed in me for making the situation more difficult than it had to be, and that it wasn't personal, just a preferences thing. She also mentioned how I had changed since I started dating Leo, and that she wasn't sure I'd be the same person I used to be. I was baffled. I've always been the same person. Just because I'm in a relationship doesn't mean I've completely changed who I am. I haven't abandoned my friends or become someone unrecognizable. But I guess she felt differently. I left the coffee meeting feeling hurt and confused. I tried to talk it over with Leo, but honestly, he didn't seem too upset. He said he didn't want to cause drama and would understand if I still wanted to go. But to me, it wasn't about Leo being okay with it. It was about Sarah making an issue out of a person she's known for years without giving him a chance. I reached out to Sarah after a few days of thinking it over. I told her that I still didn't feel comfortable attending without Leo, and that I thought it was unfair to ask me to choose between her and my partner. She got really upset, saying I was throwing away our friendship over a guy, and that she couldn't believe I was choosing him over her wedding. She said this was the biggest day of her life, and I should be able to understand why she couldn't have someone like Leo there. That was the final straw. I told her I wouldn't be attending her wedding, and she responded by saying, "Fine, I guess I don't need someone like you at my wedding anyway." That stung, but at this point I didn't feel like I had much choice. I can't be in a friendship where I feel like I have to apologize for being with someone who makes me happy. After all this, I'm feeling like maybe I made a huge mistake. Part of me thinks I could have just sucked it up and gone to the wedding without Leo. But then again, I don't know if I could have enjoyed myself knowing how she felt about him. It's not like we're strangers. We've been through so much together, and it feels like she just pushed me aside because Leo didn't fit into her wedding vision. Now, I'm getting messages from other mutual friends telling me I'm being unreasonable, that I should just go alone and show Sarah I care about her. Some are even suggesting I'm being selfish by letting a relationship come between our friendship. So, AITA for standing my ground and choosing not to attend my friend's wedding because she uninvited my partner? So I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, and we've always had a pretty close relationship. We grew up together, shared a lot of memories, and overall, I've been very supportive of her throughout her life. However, things took a turn recently when it came to her wedding plans, and now I'm questioning whether I'm being unreasonable. A little background. I have a 5-year-old daughter, Lily. She's my pride and joy, and naturally, I want to include her in important events. When Emily got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 27M, I was thrilled. It was going to be a big event, and I was excited for my sister and for Lily to experience her aunt's wedding. Emily asked me to be one of her bridesmaids, which I was honored by, but she told me she wasn't planning to have any children in the bridal party at all. I completely understood her reasoning at first. She wanted a more elegant and mature vibe for the wedding, and she felt that having kids in the bridal party might take away from that. I respected that decision, though I did feel a little sad that Lily wouldn't be involved. That is, until I found out that Emily was planning to have her best friend's daughter, who is 8, as a flower girl. Emily explained that she just didn't want any younger children in the bridal party, and that the 8-year-old was more age-appropriate for the role of flower girl. I understood her reasoning, but I couldn't help but feel hurt for Lily. She was the only young niece, and it stung that Emily didn't want to include her, even though the 8-year-old was also a child. I gently brought it up to Emily, saying that I was disappointed Lily wouldn't be part of the wedding, and that I thought it would be a nice way to include her. Emily insisted that she wanted her wedding to be elegant and child-free as much as possible, and that I was being overly sensitive. I tried to explain that Lily would be so excited to be involved in any way, even as a flower girl, but Emily wasn't hearing it. She kept saying she didn't want any drama around her wedding and that I should just respect her wishes. After that conversation, things started to feel more tense between us. I felt like she was dismissing my feelings as a mom, and I started questioning if she really cared about Lily being part of her special day. I spent weeks stewing over it, and it eventually led me to a pretty big decision. I decided that if Lily wasn't going to be included, I wasn't going to pay for anything related to the wedding. I had already agreed to contribute a substantial amount toward the wedding, mostly for the dress and some of the venue costs. But after Emily's refusal to include Lily, I made it clear that I would no longer be contributing financially to her wedding. I sent her a message that said, "I'm really hurt by how you've treated Lily. I was excited to help pay for things, but I can't continue to do that when you've made it clear that she's not welcome in any part of your wedding. If you can't see why this is upsetting, I'm not sure we're on the same page, and I think it would be better if I step back." Emily responded by telling me that I was being selfish and manipulative, and that my petty refusal to contribute was going to ruin her wedding. She said that I was making her feel guilty for something that was supposed to be her special day, and that she had every right to decide who was in her bridal party. I, of course, felt conflicted. I want to support my sister, but I also don't want to let her make decisions that hurt my daughter and, by extension, me. I've tried to stay true to my feelings, but now I'm wondering if I'm being too dramatic and overbearing. My family has been split on this, with some agreeing with Emily that I'm taking things too far, while others say I'm completely in the right. I guess my question is, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding over this issue? Should I just let it go and accept her decision, or do I have a right to feel hurt and withdraw my support? AITA for not attending my sister's wedding after she insulted my fiancé? So, a little background. I, 30M, have an older sister, Lucy, 32F. We've always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, she was the golden child of the family, Perfect grades, always following the rules, and getting tons of praise from our parents. I was more of the rebellious, artsy type, and while I did well in school, I definitely didn't get the same level of attention or validation. This created some tension between us over the years, but we've never had a huge falling out. We just had our differences. Fast forward to a few months ago. I got engaged to my amazing fiancée, Sarah, 28F. We met about 2 years ago, and I truly believe she's the one. She's smart, funny, kind, and she's everything I've ever wanted in a partner. We've had our challenges, but we've always worked through them together. Sarah and I were excited when we found out that Lucy was getting married, especially since the wedding was going to be a big family event. We're close to our parents, so we thought it would be a nice way to bond with Lucy and her soon-to-be husband, Greg, 34M, and celebrate with them. My parents were thrilled, and they encouraged us to get involved with the wedding planning and make it a fun, family-centered event. Everything seemed great. However, things started to go downhill when Sarah and I attended one of Lucy's bridal showers. It was a nice event, lots of food and games, and all the usual bridal shower stuff. Sarah, being the social person she is, was mingling with the guests and making an effort to talk to people. At some point, Lucy pulled me aside to have a private conversation. She started off by saying how happy she was that I was getting married, but then the conversation took a weird turn. She began making subtle comments about Sarah. Nothing too overt, but enough for me to notice that she was being a little passive-aggressive. For example, she mentioned how she was surprised that someone like Sarah would want to marry me, implying that Sarah was out of my league. I didn't think much of it first, but then Lucy dropped a bombshell. She said, "I just hope you realize that she's not exactly the type of person we've been used to seeing you with. I mean, she's different. You're going to have a lot to explain to people in the family, especially with our conservative relatives." I was stunned. This wasn't the first time that Lucy had made comments about Sarah's background or personality, but it was the first time she had said something so hurtful directly to me. Sarah grew up in a very liberal household, while Lucy and the rest of the family leaned more conservative, so there's always been a bit of tension between Sarah and some of my relatives. But this felt like an attack on my relationship. I immediately called Lucy out on it. I told her that I didn't appreciate her comments, and that Sarah was an incredible person who made me happy. I also reminded her that she had no right to judge my relationship or Sarah based on her own narrow perspective. Lucy got defensive, and the conversation ended awkwardly. Over the next few weeks, I tried to brush it off. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, and I hoped it was just a one-time comment. But then Lucy kept making little jabs about Sarah at family gatherings. Nothing as direct as what she said at the shower, but enough to make me uncomfortable. I talked to Sarah about it, and she was upset, but she didn't want to cause drama either. She suggested that I talk to Lucy and let her know how hurtful her comments were, but I wasn't sure if that would help. The final straw came when Lucy called me to talk about my RSVP for her wedding. I told her that I was planning to attend, but I would be bringing Sarah with me. Lucy seemed hesitant. She said, "Look, I'm not sure how things are going to work with Sarah there. Some of our more traditional relatives might be uncomfortable with her being at the wedding. I'm just trying to avoid any awkwardness." I was livid. It was like Lucy was telling me that my fiancé wasn't welcome at her wedding and that I was supposed to choose between her and Sarah. I told her that if Sarah wasn't welcome, then I wouldn't be attending the wedding either. Lucy got upset and said that I was overreacting and making everything about me. She said I was ruining her special day by causing drama. At that point, I realized that Lucy wasn't going to change her stance, and I wasn't going to be part of a celebration where my fiancé was being treated like an outsider. So, I made the decision not to attend the wedding. I informed my parents, who were disappointed, but they understood why I made the decision. However, Lucy hasn't spoken to me since. She's been sending me angry texts, calling me selfish, and saying I'm choosing Sarah over family. She also posted a passive-aggressive message on social media about people who can't handle family dynamics and prioritizing their own drama. Now, I'm feeling torn. I love my sister, but I don't think it's right for her to treat Sarah this way. I understand that weddings can be stressful, but I feel like my sister is making everything about her own vision of what's acceptable and not considering my feelings at all. On the other hand, I know this is causing tension in the family, and I don't want to be the one to tear the family apart. But at the same time, I feel like I have to stand up for Sarah. So, AITA for not attending my sister's wedding after she insulted my fiancé? Or should I have just let it go and gone to the wedding anyway to avoid causing drama? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.